I got out of a long relationship about 5 years back, almost 10 years together, starting all the way in high school. Everyone says high school sweethearts never last, and mine proved the rule. So there I was, 30-something, trying to figure out modern dating from scratch. Apps, awkward first coffees, the whole circus. Most of it went nowhere until I matched with a woman named Josefina. She went by Nia, hated her full name. We were both fresh out of long relationships, so we agreed to take things slow. That didn't stop her from asking me, almost daily, to spend the night at her place. I kept declining. Sleeping over felt like a bigger step than she seemed to realize. She even offered the couch. Eventually I asked her straight up why it mattered so much to her. She went quiet. Embarrassed, almost ashamed. She finally admitted that for weeks she'd been waking up in the dead of night convinced someone was standing in the corner of her room. At first she blamed her eyes adjusting to the dark. But mornings would come and that corner would be bare, nothing in the room shaped anything close to a person. It got worse. She said she froze up, couldn't force herself out of bed. One night on the couch, she woke to find the same figure standing in the doorway instead. The night before she confessed all this to me, she'd thrown a stuffed animal at it, just to prove to herself she wasn't losing her mind. She said it didn't pass through, it connected, and the shape of it shifted afterward. I'll admit it, I laughed. Bad habit of mine, cracking jokes when things get heavy. I told her it sounded like the monster under the bed. She was furious, said that was exactly why she hadn't told me sooner. I backpedaled, promised her there was a logical explanation, floated sleep paralysis, suggested she try sleeping with a lamp on. She had. That just meant the shadow found the closet instead, door creaking open on its own. Still not fully convinced she wasn't just exhausted and hallucinating, I agreed to stay over that night to smooth things over. She fell asleep early on the couch, worn down from weeks of bad sleep. I stayed upright next to her for hours before drifting off myself. Sometime in the night she shook me awake, terrified, pointing toward the doorway across the room. I squinted, and even through near total darkness, there was something there that didn't add up. I went to get up. She grabbed my arm, begged me not to move. I shouted at it anyway, feeling ridiculous, like I was yelling into an empty room. She was crying, saying that if I could see it too, it had to be real, that some part of her had been hoping she was just going crazy. I asked what happened next if we just left it alone. She said it just watched. Stubborn, I grabbed a throw pillow, figuring if it was really nothing, the pillow would sail straight through. She tried to stop me, reminded me the last thing she'd thrown had made contact. I threw it anyway. It hit something. A dull thud, then it dropped to the floor. The shape in the doorway slid backward into the dark room beyond and was gone. I sat bolt upright, adrenaline replacing disbelief. She was hysterical, screaming for me to come back to the couch, but I got up and crossed to the doorway. Before I stepped through, I heard whispering coming from inside, no words I could make out, just the unmistakable rhythm of someone talking low. I tried to step in. The door slammed shut in my face and I fell back. Nia screamed behind me. I tried the handle again. Locked. From the other side came the sound of things crashing and scattering, like a small storm tearing through the room. Then, silence. I grabbed my keys from my bag, popped the lock with the little tool on my keyring, and pushed the door open, flipping on the light. The room, her home office, looked like it had been through a tornado. Books, papers, furniture, all thrown everywhere. The window was wide open, screen missing entirely. And no figure. Nothing. She wanted nothing to do with the police, insisting it was something paranormal, not criminal. I wasn't so sure, but with the thing gone and my nerves settling, I didn't push it. We cleaned up together. She stayed at my place for a few nights afterward. When we eventually went back, and I stayed over again, nothing happened. Eventually she was sleeping alone in that apartment again, no incidents. 5 years later, I'm engaged to her. We still argue about what it was. She's certain it was something supernatural. I still lean toward a rational explanation I just haven't landed on. The one thing we agree on, whatever it was there. We both saw it. We both heard it. Sometimes I wonder which would actually be worse, a shadow entity, or a person who was really standing there watching her sleep. Either way, it never happened again. At least, not yet. Fifth grade, so I was about 10. I had plenty of friends, no shortage of attention. My parents used to call me a social butterfly. Partway through the year, a new kid showed up, Alfred. Awkward, quiet, easy target. My friends turned his name into a joke almost immediately, shortening a cruel nickname until it stuck. He never seemed to react to any of it outwardly. He'd moved in right next door to me, so we ended up riding the bus and walking home together, which is how I found out we both loved pro wrestling, a passion none of my other friends shared. We bonded over it during those short walks, though we never really hung out beyond that, and at school my friends made it clear he wasn't welcome at our lunch table. One Friday, my mom got off the phone looking sympathetic. She'd been talking to Alfred's mother, who said he was struggling and that I was one of the only kids being kind to him. She asked if I'd sleep over that night. I didn't want to. My friends would have torn into me if they found out, but my mom had already agreed on my behalf before I had a say. His parents turned out to be warm, welcoming people. His dad, wearing an old wrestling shirt, cracked jokes and talked shop with me like we were old friends. I actually started having a good time. Before bed, they told us we could stay up as late as we wanted, with one rule: stay out of the basement. When I asked why, Alfred said his dad kept work equipment down there that wasn't safe to be around. I never sleep well away from home, so that night I lay awake and heard his dad get up, cross the hall, and go down into the basement. Muffled static-like sound drifted up through the vent near my head for almost an hour before stopping. Then footsteps came back up, paused in the living room, and returned upstairs. I assumed he'd been watching old tapes and eventually fell asleep. Morning came, and he was back to his cheerful self, cooking breakfast, telling me about the mountain of wrestling shows he had recorded on VHS down in the basement, the perks of being what he called a tape trader, collectors who swapped rare recordings. Alfred lit up describing matches I had to see. His dad said I could stay another night, and that he'd pull tapes for us once he got back from an errand. Once he left, I mentioned to Alfred that I'd heard his dad in the basement overnight. Alfred looked genuinely confused, like this wasn't normal. Curiosity got the better of me and I suggested we sneak down and look at the tape collection ourselves, just for a few minutes. He was clearly uneasy but gave in. The basement was standard, cold, unfinished, cluttered, except for one thing: a yellow wooden door in the back with "Get Out" spray painted across it. Alfred said it had been there when they moved in and his dad just left it as a quirky decoration. Behind it was a wall of shelving packed with labeled tapes and an old television with a VCR. Most tapes had detailed labels, event names, years. But scattered among them were a handful marked with nothing but generic numbers: tape 1, tape 2, and so on. Curiosity won again. I grabbed one and fed it into the VCR. Instead of wrestling, the screen filled with grainy static resolving into an entirely red-toned room. Red walls, red floor, a single wooden chair. No people on screen, but screaming bled in from somewhere off camera, the kind of sound that stays lodged in your memory for decades. Then a masked man stepped into frame, spoke cheerfully to the camera, something like, "Stay tuned, you won't want to miss what's next," and laughed as the screaming behind him grew louder. Alfred yanked the tape out the second he heard a car outside. We bolted upstairs. His dad came in acting exactly like before, warm, goofy, unaware, before heading down to the basement himself. That's when I remembered I hadn't put the tape back. An hour later he came back upstairs, and everything about him had changed. No more jokes. He told me flatly that I needed to go home, and walked off before I could respond. I left immediately, too unsettled to stay another minute. Alfred wasn't at school the following Monday. I went by his house after class and found him at the door, clearly upset. He told me his family was moving right away, his dad had a new job. His dad appeared behind him, and Alfred cut the conversation short and shut the door. By Tuesday, he was gone entirely. Our teacher made a brief announcement that he wouldn't be returning, and that was that. Nobody seemed to think much of it. Years later, retelling the story to friends, one of them brought up something called the Red Room, supposedly a piece of dark web urban legend involving footage of exactly what I described. I brushed it off. This had happened on VHS, long before that kind of internet content existed. But the more I told the story, the more people connected the dots to that legend anyway. When we tried searching for Alfred online as adults, we found nothing, no trace of him or his family, like they'd never existed. I still don't know for certain what I saw. Maybe it really was some kind of early, homemade precursor to whatever the Red Room became. Maybe it was staged, a bad joke, nothing at all. But when I let myself think about it too long, sleep doesn't come easy, because if it was real, I was standing a few feet away from something genuinely monstrous, and I walked out without ever knowing it.